And here we are again. Hi everyone, welcome back to this next episode of the PREMACON LIEBHERR R960 SME build up. Let's quickly recap where we left off last time. So we did manage to assemble the first parts of the undercarriage, and in this episode we will mount all remaining components to finish up with a working undercarriage. So first of all, of course, you do have the track, one for each side, left and right. Next you have the main track rollers together with the corresponding mounting brackets and the idler wheels, and of course some track guides. And last but not least, there are the sprocket wheels and the slewing ring. Let's jump right in and start with the first step, the main track rollers. So here they are, and there are a lot of them, and they mount on the underside of the undercarriage in all those little holes where we removed the paint last time. Let's quickly take a look at how each of these track roller units is assembled and how it's put together. So for each track roller there are basically these two mounting brackets, the roller itself, and one pin that goes in the center. So first check if everything runs nice and smooth, and then simply put it all together. And there we are. With all the roller units pre-assembled, it's time to mount them to the main part. Each unit is mounted with 4 screws and the assembly is pretty straightforward. Just make sure every roller turns nice and easy. Since we took our time to remove the paint from each of the 72 threads previously, it's really easy at this point. By the way, I don't use any thread lock here, but that's more of a personal preference. Also, all screws are easily accessible later on, and should you ever need to remove a roller, it's easier without thread locks. As it turns out, the mounting brackets of this roller are a bit too far apart, and since some force is needed, it's a perfect opportunity to use the big parallel gripper. The medium size 125 version might have also done the job though. By the way, the links to all the tools that I use are in the video description, so feel free to check them out. The next parts to mount are the track guides. And there are two different kinds of track guides. One type is mounted at the front, right next to the idler wheel. That's this one. And then there is this second type of track guide, and that's actually mounted right over the main track rollers. The number of track guides that are mounted to the model actually depends on the configuration that is ordered. So in the base configuration there is only one track guide per side. and that's mounted right at the back where the sprocket wheel sits. And if you have chosen the heavy duty track guide option, 4 more track guides are mounted to the model. By the way, these track guides are made from several individual stainless steel parts that are micro-welded together by hand to form this track guide assembly. Like here you can see a point where the parts are welded together, these bright points on the stainless steel parts, and that's actually how most metal parts of the model are made, so they are welded together from individual parts like the whole undercarriage. After we are now finished with the underside of the undercarriage, it's time to add some details. There are 4 steps in total that need to be mounted on both sides. Of course, these parts are also made from metal, and in fact they are made as fine casting out of brass. By now this assembly is really just straightforward. Next we want to mount the sprocket wheels. First, a small, rather weak looking dowel pin is inserted crosswise to the drive shaft. On one hand, this transfers the torque from the sprocket wheel. On the other side, this acts as an intended weak point. Should the track ever block, for example, if a stone gets between the chain and the sprockets, the dowel pin will break. With doing so, it will prevent bigger damage to the gearbox and the motor. If it breaks, it can be replaced in a matter of minutes though. The next part that we want to mount are some additional counterweights that find place inside the undercarriage. Not that you really need them, it's just in case you would like to get this extra portion of gravity to your model. All weights in total add about 1.2 kg, that should be around 2.6 pounds. To make things easier, the individual plates can be glued with super glue to install them in one unit. Before we mount the cover plate, we need to add the slewing ring as it is fixed from the inside. I really recommend using some thread lock for these screws as they will experience quite high and alternating forces, and you really don't want to get them loose over time. As the electrical rotary feed-through will be fixed now, I am placing a spool of tape underneath the model. That way the cables won't get damaged, as the whole weight of the model would rest on the point where the cables come out of the feed-through. So we've come pretty far by now. The only thing left to do is to mount the tracks. And here they are. As this is a painted kit, the tracks are pre-assembled because they get painted as one piece. For an unpainted kit, the tracks would be shipped as individual pieces and you would have to need them assembled by yourself. As comparison, you can see the track on the left is unpainted and the track on the right is the painted one that will be mounted on the model. At this point, let's briefly talk about some different kind of tracks. The ones on the left are so-called triple grouser tracks, as they have 3 bars on each track plate. They are also narrower compared to the tracks that we will mount on this model, as they are intended for smaller machines like the LIEBHERR R960 or R960. Getting back to the grousers, for real size equipment, the kind of track or number of grousers is mainly dependent on the kind of machine and underground where it's supposed to work on. So for regular construction sites, the 3 grouser tracks will be what you can see the most. Double growser tracks are commonly used in more rough terrain like quarries. And there are also single growser tracks, but they are only used on dozers. Their main advantage is that a single growser sinks quite deep into the soil and therefore can transfer quite high forces to the ground without slipping. What is especially important for dozers, as their main task is to push soil around. Also, the width of the track is chosen on the bearing capacity of the soil. On soft soils, you need to have a wider track to spread the weight of the machine on a bigger area and therefore preventing the machine from sinking in. On hard soils, however, you can use a narrow track as the soil can carry more weight on a smaller area. Taking a look at the side of the track, you can distinguish on which side of the machine it's supposed to go. On the inside of the track you have all these C-clips, whereas on the visible outside the bolts have a nice looking flathead. Also, of course, you need to take care to mount the track the right way around on the machine. If you take a closer look on the track link, you can see that one side is slightly concave or angled down, as the other side is convex because it has to fit the next link. And they pretty much overlap. So when you place the track on the machine, you want to place it in that way that the bent down side is on top of the idler wheel, like shown here. So obviously this would be the wrong track because the C-clips would be on the outside. To finally mount the track, we install the tensioning wheel as the first step. Even though this piece slides relative to the guides, I would strongly recommend to not use any oil or grease here. Once you drive through the dirt, it will stick to the grease and clog up the whole system, so it's best to install it just dry as it is. To put in the final bolt, we first have to overcome the tension of the spring. It would be best to get a helping hand at this point, so someone who pushes the track while you are installing the bolt. The other option would be just to get a big spanner like I do here that pushes together the track and makes installing the bolt quite easy. At this point, we've already reached a pretty big step in the build-up. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did building this model. If so, feel free to like, subscribe and also hit that bell to get notified as soon as the next episode is released. Bye bye and until next time.